Well, a very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where in the world you are tuning in from. My name is Adrian Reed, and a very warm welcome to this BA Community webinar. This webinar is on such an important topic, I believe such an important topic, one that affects us all professionally as business analysts, but also as citizens, as residents. Cybersecurity should be front and center of our minds. There are so many potential pitfalls, whether as as an individual trying to access your online bank account, or indeed as a BA defining how that online banking service works. So I'm really pleased to say that we've got two global thought leaders on the topic of cybersecurity and business analysis with us today. Today I'm joined by Terry Baresh, all the way from Minneapolis, Minnesota. You are Minneapolis, aren't you, in Minnesota? Yeah. And Bindu Channaveerappa, who normally is in London, but I think you're in India today. Is that right, Bindu?
Yes, you're right. So probably just look out for any honks around in between the session.
So a truly global webinar already. And if you are joining, if you're attending live, feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself and say where you're from. It's always really interesting to know what kind of a global reach we have. So I'm not going to take up any more time other than to say that, as I say, really pleased that we've got two global thought leaders on this topic. So I'm going to hand over straight to Terry and Bindu to talk about how BAs can contribute to cybersecurity. So Terry and Bindu, over to you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Appreciate this. Appreciate the opportunity to be presenting, and very honored to be presenting with Bindu. I'm Terry Baresh from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've been working in cybersecurity for many years as a business analyst, and also contributed to the IIBA's and EEE cybersecurity certification and analysis. Bindu, do you have a few things you want to say?
Again, brilliant. It's great to be here with you, Terry, and of course with Adrian, another thought leader who is kind of inspiring and always there to kind of help us to grow in the industry. So yeah, this is again a very passionate subject for both of us, Terry, we know, and of course we've been kind of sharing this message or rubbing it with the professional colleagues, and Adrian is one such, and here we are for another opportunity to share this imperative message. And hopefully, if you're new to cybersecurity at the end of the session, we really hope that you realize the importance of cybersecurity and why it is so important for us BAs.
All right, thank you. Yeah, why is cybersecurity important and why do we care? Here in the United States, it's October. This is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So there are many organizations and institutions that are celebrating, or at least practicing, cyber hygiene to improve their cyber hygiene. But why do we care? And the reality is that cybercrime continues to increase. As we can see, it's increased significantly since the pandemic started. So many opportunities with people working remotely. We actually have recorded history now of deaths related to ransomware attacks. One in Alabama, 2020, and another one in the UK. Sadly, these folks were on their way in an ambulance to a hospital that was attacked, and that hospital couldn't accept them, and they actually died en route to the alternate. So this does not include the attacks that are happening as a result of the invasion in Ukraine. If we were to measure cybercrime as a product of their like a GDP, cybercrime would rank third in countries in the world today. By 2025, it's estimated that $10.5 trillion will transfer in wealth annually as a direct result of cybercrime. So that's just how significant this is to all of us. And as we know, cyber warfare really is continuing to heat up, and we need to be training more cyber professionals than building nuclear weapons. No joke on that. So what are some of the things that we can do right now, today, to protect what's important and valuable to you and increase your cyber hygiene and your cyber awareness at work? It's simple. One of the most common ways that hackers get in is by compromising an account. They do that by brute force attack of your passwords, by managing to get your password using weak passwords. If you're using a weak password anywhere, you can take a look here at this graph, this chart, and see how quickly the cyber attackers can crack a password. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that the complexity is important, but what does complexity really imply when we're building a password? If you look here at this list, number 6, that looks like a pretty simple password, but in fact, it's very complex to systems. So I always recommend that if you are not using a password manager, please look into using one. And with that password manager, the manager will create complex passwords for you. You don't actually have to remember passwords anymore. And more importantly, the only password you need to remember is for that password manager. And if we look at this chart, if you had 3 simple 5 character words combined, that is a very complex password and easy to remember. So one of the very first things that we can do, just as people with digital presence, is manage your passwords securely. Don't reuse your passwords, and recognize that passwords are an entrance to our digital lives. Here and at work, or wherever we volunteer, wherever we are. So, what is cybersecurity? If you wish, try to write a short, brief definition or a few keywords into the chat, and I'll turn it over to Bindu.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, so probably now you have a brief look at the current state of the affair of the cybersecurity domain and what we can do at an individual level. So now, what do you understand by the word cybersecurity? Okay, I can see vigilance against online threat. Yes, protecting your data. Please feel free to respond because there's no wrong answer here. Anybody else? Keeping information and data and secrets secure. Brilliant. Okay, so let's first of all understand the term security here. So Terry, could we just go to the next slide, please? Okay, so why is this understanding important? Because as business analysts, we know that before we do anything, we always ask that why question. So when we understand this big why, the what, how, when, who, we can just figure out later on. But this why is so important. And same is the case here. So before we get into the cybersecurity, let's understand what does this mean. So now the next question, what you have is, Terry, next slide, please. How do you protect your home? Would you like to type in the chat box, please? Terry, the previous one, if you don't mind. Yeah, let's stay here. Thank you. In the chat box, please type in, how do you protect your home? What all would you do? Lock doors and windows, thorough physical and behavioral actions, brilliant. Alarm, doors, windows, keys. I like that. Security cameras. Alarm. 5 locks, lock the door and windows. Don't have things visible. Yes, cats. I like that. Lights. Yes. Brilliant. Okay. Yes, all of you are correct. even in cybersecurity definition or understanding, and even how do you protect fierce dogs. Brilliant, yes. They also say, even if you just have a boat, beware of dogs. Even without a dog would still do some protection anyway. So all of these answers are correct. However, they are not complete. Tell me, did you guys even think about the smoke detector to protect? I can see Adrian nodding no. Anybody else? You can just type in yes or no. That is fine. Did securing your Wi-Fi or IoT devices come to your mind? And I saw some of you mentioning locking the doors and windows and all that. What about your valuables? Yes, Adrian said, don't keep anything visible, which means if you're not keeping it visible, how are you going to protect it? And what about the normal cleaning and maintaining the house or maintaining the hygiene? Even that is a way of protection. Yes or no? Yes, I can see many yeses. Absolutely. Protecting your surroundings. And what about the people here? Because it's a home, it's not a house. So home is made up of people as well. So protection of people also comes into protection of your home. Is this making you think? Is this really trying to take you to those different areas that you didn't think in the first instance of protecting your home? What about the home insurance? I didn't see that on the list. Even home insurance or the life insurance, these are all protecting home as well. So that is exactly why when we talk about security, we just try to see only those areas that we are aware of, and we don't see the other areas. And that is exactly when our homes or systems or organizations become vulnerable. And when this vulnerable is exposed, of course, there's a threat and incidents or the breach. So Terry, if we could go to next slide, please. So this is one perspective, that is those things that we don't know. And now there's another perspective to it. So what do we see in this image here? You can type in, we see a bicycle. Is this bicycle parked? Again, yes or no, with a lock on it. Brilliant, yes. And is it the right lock? Of course, everybody locks like that. I also lock my bike to any of those poles. And is that the right lock? Of course. Now, the important question is the bike secured? Let's see that on the next slide. There you go. It is not secured. Yes, I can see the answers. Hannah says not really. Rishma says no. Exactly. Because within our organizations, we think, yes, I have got the standard installed and I have the IT team who looks into each and every security requirements. We have the compliance who's going to tick all the boxes, governance, auditing, everything is done. And yet, in spite of ticking all these boxes, it is still, we hear and read about the breaches almost every other day. There you go. Yes, we see in Portsmouth too, everywhere. So this is exactly when we talk about the security mindset. It is just not ticking the boxes. It is making sure you're ticking the box for the right reasons. And we are also achieving our objective of why that is the security. So knowing all the aspects of security is very important, and doing the right things at the right time is also very, very important. So going back to our question, what is cybersecurity? There again, whatever you answered, yes, they're all right, but they might not be complete. So Terry, if you could click for me, please. Thank you. So we could be working at a project level or a product level where we will be authenticating the product or using the credentials, login and password, or now we have multi-factor authentications. So these are all at the product level we could be working. Terry, next one, please. Or We could be working on projects where we will be securing the firewall or encrypting the data or our gates, protecting our gateways. Terry, next, please. Or we could be even working to implement the standards or in one or the other security frameworks. Terry, next one, please. Or we could be even working on projects for adhering to legal and regulatory requirements. GDPR is one of the examples. Or at a strategic level, we could be performing risk analysis or information analysis. And when we do all of these activities, theoretically, all of them are connected. But when we work on projects, we all work on silos. They are not really connected. When we are working on those projects, we do not actually think about what our security policy says, and is it exactly what we are implementing? Only when we can connect the dots from the security policy at the strategic level up to the product level, only then we can aim towards securing our product and our organizations and our organization's crown jewels, that's the data. So cybersecurity is actually the protection of systems, processes, networks, and data within the cyberspace. And I would go another step to add even the people as well in this, whether it's the clients or our employees. And again, within the categorization of data, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Of course, Terry is just going to go a little bit in detail on explaining those categorization, but only when we include all of this within the categorization, aligning all our activities and processes and data according to the policy, then we will be closer to a step towards securing our organization. Okay, Terry, next one, please. And I think over to you again.
All right, thank you, Bindu. Yeah, changing that mindset is a monumental effort, even for us as individuals, but to think about that at the scope or scale of large organizations. We talk about security posture, that's almost kind of a measurement of what that organization sees as its ability to secure its information, its network systems, the data, and the people in it. What is, again, cybersecurity? Bindu gave a really nice definition. As we can see, it's really around these concepts of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I have data in the middle because that's really what it is that cybersecurity is securing. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, part of DHS in the US, has a definition of cybersecurity. And I like that they included that it's actually an art as well as a collection of systems, processes, and technology. What's missing, I think, from this, though, is the business value of investing in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is no longer something that we have. You can't buy cybersecurity and just put it in. Just like we were talking about protecting your home, we start with the locks on the doors and windows, but then when we start to evaluate the entire complexity of our world, even just in our home or our apartments, there are many, many things that we need to protect. And it's that ecosystem of things that we recognize we're always protecting. We can't just protect them once. And that's part of that security posture and the importance or the recognition of establishing and growing cyber hygiene, being more secure and more aware of the threats. So that goal is to really identify vulnerabilities and work towards mitigating those threats and securing the confidentiality of data, the integrity of that data, and still making it available so that the business can use it. In the old model of cybersecurity, we used to put a wall around our stuff, the locks on our doors and windows, and then just assume that everything inside is secure. Well, as our kind of our walkthrough of security of our home right? There are many things that are now inside and outside the castle that we have to protect. The castle wall grew exponentially when we moved to the cloud. So that model of protecting everything inside from an outside threat, and then assuming that everything inside is safe, is no longer valid. So we have to adopt a new model, a new paradigm of security. The other thing we recognize is that you can't actually protect everything at the same level or with available investments. You have to prioritize your investments to secure the things that are most valuable with the highest form of protection, and those things that are less valuable with lower types of protection. So we're really talking about layering your security, providing multiple layers of security, or what's sometimes referred to as defense in depth, creating those layers that are going to protect the more important, valuable things with more investment. So the castle wall model no longer is valid. We need to move to another model that's risk-based, that's focused around doing the risk assessment, that's understanding the worth and value of things that are important to us and to business, to our customers, and also recognizing, this is the hardest thing about the security posture, is that in the old days, we used to prepare against a threat. Today, we need to start preparing for the threat. In other words, recognizing that most companies, if they haven't already, will be breached. All companies are under attack. The number of attacks is extraordinary. It's in the tens to hundreds of thousands of times per day. So it's learning to become resilient that we're moving towards. It's recognizing that it's not when, it's not if, it's when, and preparing for that inevitable when, protecting those things that are most important with the highest controls of security, and then working our way down to those things that are not that important. Let's not invest so heavily in there. Designing for resilience is truly a risk-based approach. It's much more surgical than that broad sweep. We'll install a firewall and ignore it. This is actually looking at things very precisely and deciding which things must get the attention and focus. So how does this risk-based approach align with cybersecurity? What are some of those areas that we as business analysts can really become involved in and understand and then apply in that resilient risk-based approach to cyber? I'm going to turn this back over to Bindu.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, so before we get into the risk process and the risk management process, again, another question. What do you understand by the term risk? What does risk mean to you? Again, please use the chat box to type in your answers. And why do you think it is important? Something undesirable that could happen, yes. Compromise, yeah. Again, there's no wrong answers. It's absolutely right. Risk is possible threat, yes, absolutely. And even that might happen, yes. Event that might happen, probably a negative event. That is where we tend to call it as risk, because it's a negative event, yes. Thanks, Sarah. Of course, yes. So risk is identifying what can go wrong. So in our previous example, when we were talking about how to protect our homes, I think normally the answers that came up there because you thought that was important. And some of the aspects you didn't even think that they were important. So security is something where we can call anything as secure only when all its risks are managed. And there is no one solution. We can't say, okay, here is a template, or here is all the solutions, go and implement it. Because even each and every home is different. Parameters are different. Something more valuable to us could not be of the same value to another person. So all of these together is something that we have to identify what is valuable for us. And only then we will be able to identify, okay, what is the risk of losing that? What is that negative event that might occur if something goes wrong? So this is the mindset, again, going back to the security mindset. When we have the security mindset, we can ask these risk questions. So Terry, the next slide, please. We don't know what we don't know. When we don't know certain things, obviously we won't be asking what can go wrong with that. And that is where we are creating a huge possibility for threats. Terry, the next one, please. Okay, so probably we all might have gone through the risk management process. So for this session, we are just using this ISO process for our understanding. In fact, we need a whole session to talk about risk management. But however, as we can see here, this is a cyclic process. The first and foremost is establishing the context, which is nothing but identifying what is that a valuable asset that we need to protect. It could be people, it could be your jewels, it could be your house, it could be your car, it could be the organization's data or your personal data, anything for that matter. So first, when we identify the context, only then we can start thinking, okay, what can go wrong for this particular asset? And once you understand what all can go wrong, then you start understanding, okay, if this can go wrong, what is the likelihood of this going wrong? And what are the impacts if this goes wrong? And am I going to bear that? What would the impact in terms of financial, in terms of reputation, in terms of emotional, if it is so personal to me? And what is the impact even my mental status or reputation, anything for that matter? So all that analysis part is to identify what is the probability and the impact and the criticality as well. And once we understand that, okay, these are the risks and this is what the impact is, and you start prioritizing it. Okay, if a smoke alarm is not working, I know that is important, so I'm going to prioritize that and get that fixed today. Or anything for that matter, identify those risks that needs to be actioned and you treat those risks, whether we fix it or whether we kind of reduce the risk so that we can accept certain risks, a certain part of the risk, or we can totally eliminate it, or we can even share the risk, or we can do something else instead of doing this activity. And throughout this process, we have to have constant communication and consultation. And of course, the regular review cycles, because things are so dynamic. The risk, what we thought in the beginning of the project, may not be the same during the middle or at the end. So constantly going through this, identifying this cycle is very, very important. Okay, so Terry, the next slide, please. So cyber risk is just not the data risk, it is the business risk. Because if any organization is not identifying their cyber risk, no matter what business they are in, it's a risky business. So here is the formula. That is what I was just sharing with you, is the likelihood of the threat. And when that is exploited, it becomes a vulnerability, and the impact is the risk. So compliance is just not enough. As we saw, ticking all the boxes for the bicycle didn't protect the bicycle. So as part of the risk management process, we are just not being compliant, but we are really, really taking the box for whatever the reasons. And that is all basically, when we don't identify what the risk is, we cannot fix it. So the whole process of that risk cycle really helps the organization. So irrespective of whether we are at the product level or the project level or at the strategic level, identify at that level what are those risks. So Terry, the next one, please. So here are some of the BA rules. Again, another one. Yeah, that as business analysts, what we can support or how we can support our organizations around this risk management. So first and foremost, implementing the risk management frameworks itself. And then identifying assets and configurations. What are the data assets? What are the systems that needs really protection? And what are those configurations that are required and how it is managed as well? Tracking vulnerabilities. I'm sure Terry is going to share some of those techniques, how as BAs we can involve ourselves to track those vulnerabilities. And of course, performing the whole risk assessments as well. And of course, the exception cases, so that we can highlight to the organization what are those exception cases and how we are going to mitigate those. Prioritization, which is as BAs we anyway do for the requirements, but the same thing we will be doing for those risks. And categorizing the mitigating controls, which is all part of our requirement catalog, which will all feed into our requirement catalog going forward. Okay, Terry, the next one, please. Okay, so back to you, Terry, for further BA roles and activities to support organizations.
Thank you, Bindu. That was amazing to summarize what really takes a couple of hours to do in a workshop, to go through the process that's defined through risk management. All of the steps involved in identifying your assets and going through your risk assessment, the risk analysis, the risk treatment. I've seen some comments in the chat here recognizing the risk treatment possibilities, and then the continuous cycle of that. So well done. Risk-based cybersecurity is really the direction that most organizations, if they're not doing now, they need to take that direction. Maturity-based organizations, where they look to see the maturity of their capabilities, is a great place to start. But at a certain point, there simply aren't enough analysts in the world. I think there's a gap of over 3 million cybersecurity jobs that are open today, looking for analysts and looking for talent. So the shortage of talent indicates that we can't afford to protect everything, and the cost to protect everything is exorbitant. It's simply not possible. So we need to have that risk analysis, that risk capability to analyze and evaluate their environments to determine where to invest. Business analysts, being able to do those risk assessments and being aware of that helps to invest. So Bindu did a fantastic job of making it seem like, it's relatively straightforward, but dig in, go do some research around that and become familiar with those risk models and risk frameworks, risk management frameworks. Also find out from your company, what's their risk appetite, who are doing those risk assessments. Ask around, get involved. Some of the other things that business analysts are doing today in and around cybersecurity are things as simple as writing user stories for security and adding that acceptance criteria to test for those security components. In the past, we used to call those non-functional requirements. Today, they need to be baked in, whether you call them functional or non-functional or specs or acceptance criteria. The reality is that we need to be writing user stories for security. They need to be baked into the design of our solutions. The idea that you can create personas, which we oftentimes do now if you're working in those value-driven models or in agile, start using malicious personas, bad actor personas, the grumpy old man persona, the 14-year-old bored gamer persona. A lot of times we're testing the capability of our solution to see if it works. It's actually worth taking some time to test those capabilities of our solution against those unintended those actors out there who we didn't intend to be using our product, but actually are looking for ways in or looking for ways to create opportunities. So create those user stories, create that acceptance criteria around those personas, and start baking that design into your solutions. Another concept that we're moving forward in cybersecurity in our application development is something called AppSecDev. If you work in DevOps environment, this concept now is evolving to shift left. For most of us English or Romantic speaking folks, we read from left to right. And so the concept comes from moving this closer to the beginning of our design process. So what I'm talking about here, again, is designing security into the solution before you start building. What we've learned from research and from a lot of data is that the cost to add security at the end of your project, when you're getting ready to deploy it, the cost can be 100 times more than if you bake the security into the designs. And that's extraordinary. And a lot of times today, folks get to the end, they start to deploy their solution, their application or the whatever into production. Security comes along and says, we can't actually secure this. So all that effort, all that work, all those resources, all that money that went into building your solution is wasted if it can't be secured. So the technologies today, the things that we're working with, and the types of threats that are out there, the capabilities of the threat actors is so profound that if you don't design the security in, that solution can't actually be protected against the capabilities of those threat actors. So this notion of shift your design left, even in ideation, even as you're beginning to talk about a solution that you need, a business need, a problem statement, somewhere in that business case, start describing the value that the cybersecurity solutioning will provide to that product and to the company. Those are really important steps that BAs can now start bringing into the conversation. When you're working with your solution architects, start looking at those opportunities for security. How do we design security in, not just the login, not just the firewall, but literally, what are the components of the coding? What's the way in which we're going to actually design and code this? Where are we securely storing our architectural drawings? How are we providing secure access into this process of even developing the solution? And then within the solution itself, thinking through a lot of those security hygiene concepts. So to say that there are some opportunities for business analysis, business analysts, product owners, whatever role that you're in, there are many opportunities for you to start bringing security, if you aren't already, and many of you I know are, and that's really exciting, to bring security into the conversation, into those early designs, through the entire process, testing security capabilities. When we talk about AppSecDev, that DevOps, continuous integration, continuous design, continuous deployment concept, I'm making the figure 8 model here with my hand, because it's continuous, right? We have to be continuously aware of the security threats, and looking for our vulnerabilities, and then within there, designing security into that. That is really paramount now for maintaining the agility and the nimbleness of our companies, of our solution, for our companies to remain nimble, to be able to pivot on opportunities or to avoid threats rapidly, being able to identify those threats, recognize the vulnerability, and pin that to a security control enables the company to do that faster. And that's really important. So security actually is, as we design it, creating a new capability for your company, your organization, your nonprofit to move securely faster. That's important consideration. So again, the things that cybersecurity, that business analysts can do around cyber, make sure that you're including security in those business cases, in the scope statement, right? Make sure that security is included. When you're doing your work breakdown structure, add those security components right in there, right? Working with cybersecurity analysts, working with your AppSec security teams, scanning software as it's being coded. Permitting processes. Today, many organizations require that you go through a permitting process before you can even start to build. Make sure that you're including your security controls, your security concerns in that process. Are you speaking with the right folks? Recognizing the current standards for your company. We get to project milestones. Work with your project managers, your scrum masters, the product owners, and making sure that you've got security milestones in the actual plan, whether those are part of your scrum, part of the, integrated into your epics, the part of the backbone, right? There are opportunities to say security is that important. Make sure that you're including your information security, your privacy, and your compliance teams. Understand what are your compliance and regulatory obligations. Make sure that those are baked into the design. Again, we talk about the continuous loop of integration, design, testing. If you're building systems for testing, if you're building systems for QA, make sure that you're including the security components into those designs as well, right? You don't want to bake that security on later. It's too expensive. It takes too long. It can crash the whole project. Make sure that you, in your BA role, are also writing test plans for security. There are many, many more too. And I'm sure that those folks who are on the call or watching this video are doing some of those things, and appreciate that. Share those with your colleagues, share those with your friends, share those with your project team, and let's continue to build and incorporate cybersecurity into those things that we do every day. Test plans. Maybe not the test cases. I'm just responding to the last chat here, Roshma. Oftentimes BAs are asked to be that involved, but certainly be involved in some way with the test planning. So in those areas where so at this point, Bindu, would you like to add any last comments before we hop onto a Q&A here?
Yeah, sure. As just again, going back to Rishma's comment, it is, yes, we don't include security because we are not aware of it. So let's say that we are, as business analysts, we are performing as simple as a SWOT analysis. Okay, and if we don't include the weaknesses of the security, then obviously the analysis is not complete. So again, going back to the point, as we don't know what we don't know, because we don't know about security, we don't perform those analysis. So the very first step is probably to go back and start at looking for your security policy. It could be on the intranet somewhere or in some folder, and just check and start reading it. And if you don't understand, that's absolutely fine. Go to the IT people or the security team who actually writes that and maintains that, and just have those discussions so that you can start using the language of the security. And I think we are, as BAs, we tune our minds and we start asking those questions, and which means we trigger those conversations, and which would be multifold benefits. One is, yes, we understand what it is, and at the same time we also educate or try to perform our analysis and ask those key questions if there's anything missing. And when we do our work, we could talk to the business, we talk to the IT team, we talk to the developers, we talk to the QA team. We just go to everybody So similarly, the moment when we think that, okay, this is something product and how do we protect it, and what are the reasons and why do we need to protect for, because as I mentioned in the beginning, that every home is different and the parameters are different. So there's no one solution. So the moment you start thinking about what can go wrong, then have those conversations. And today, as business analysts, we might not have all the answers for our business. Then we go to our business SMEs. So similarly, now the moment you think, okay, in security perspective, what can go wrong here? Then you go to the security SMEs or the IT team, and then go to those SMEs if we need to, whether they are sitting in the compliance team or they're sitting in the technical solution team, which is the IT team, or itself the security team who actually kind of categorizes and writes all those policies so that we can, as BAs, I really, really believe that if we don't include security, our analysis is complete. So that is where the ownership actually came, and that's how my journey started, because I just cannot leave my analysis on the table if it is incomplete. And that's exactly what the journey is. And of course, security is always a journey, never a destination. We know that every shiny gadget today is old tomorrow, and that can be broken. So it is a continuous cycle. And yes, we will have to be proactive. We'll have to kind of keep ourselves ahead with like any of the BA techniques or the new tools. We actually learn those. Similarly, security techniques or what of those activities that we need to do, again, they are something that we have to constantly keep learning so that we can play in this digital space. And this is just a start. As we know, there's a lot of tomorrow's world is everything digital and technology. So this is just a start, and we will have to keep up to date ourselves, be constant learners, as we do with other BA stuff. I think there are a couple of questions here.
I get the impression that Sarah has a good knowledge around some of these cyber concepts. I really appreciate that you mentioned including these in contracts, vendor contracts, supplier contracts, third-party assessments, right? Security is baked into all of those as well. So good call out.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Terry and Bindu, for a really engaging, really interesting presentation. For those of you attending live, do type your questions into the Q&A panel. We have a couple already, but just while you're typing your questions in, I just want to do a quick plug for, well, first of all, to say that if you have enjoyed what Bindu and Terry have had to say, this is the point where normally in a real world presentation, we'd be giving them a very warm round of applause. So we'll give them a virtual round of applause, but also it's really important, you know, a virtual round of applause can also be connecting with LinkedIn, on LinkedIn with people. So I put Terry, Bindu and my links in there in the chat for you to connect. Please do connect. It's a great way to continue to build the BA community. I also you know, do follow Blackmetric on LinkedIn as well. Also, just while you're typing in your questions, I just want to very quickly show you another free resource that is available. So I'm just going to briefly share my screen, and in the chat I will put the link to get to this. You don't need to register for it or anything like that. It's completely free. You can just click through or download it. It's a resource called BA Digest. It's a quarterly magazine about all things business analysis related. So there's 60 odd pages of some really interesting stuff. So do click on that link, download that, you know, download that and enjoy that as well. But anyway, now back to the questions. So
sorry, Adrian, just that you mentioned resources. We also had in our deck the last 2 slides, which is full of links with a lot of resources on cybersecurity, so that BAs can kind of just start reading those. There are certifications. I think there's a question as well around that, so CCA certification, and this month there's a discount as well. So that is one of the good option, IIBA CCA certification. And there are several links where you can, to magazines, to actually standard organizations. Yeah, brilliant.
If you
yeah, there you go.
Leave that on the screen while we're taking the questions. So
yeah,
fantastic. So our first question comes from, and apologies if I mispronounce your name, I think it's Irina, says, what risk management responsibilities should only the BA take, and which are only the PM's responsibility? So Terry, Bindu, what do you make of that?
I think there was a similar comment from Rushma as well. So in my experience, yes, the project manager owns the risks, but the analysis part of those risks should be performed by BAs, because we are trained to perform analysis. We know how to do the analysis, and we actually also know the in and out of the systems. We know the business altogether. So I think we would be in a right place. But yes, if there are gaps in our knowledge, we can always go ahead. But I guess it is the BA who has to do analysis. That's my experience.
Yeah,
Terry,
I
anything?
agree with that completely. Yeah, the PM needs to ensure that the appropriate risk assessments or analyses are being performed according to the project timeline, depending on the size and scope. But the analysis itself done by the BA in conjunction with the SMEs.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because I always think when I read, and I think it's a great question from Irina there, but I sometimes wonder whether there's like responsibility, accountability, but then there are elements like risk identification that actually is everyone's responsibility. Because if somebody sees a risk, it might not be their responsibility to do the risk analysis, but if you see a risk, if you like, even like if you're in an office and you're like, oh, that cable looks a bit frayed, it might, you're not going to say, oh, but I don't do risk assessments on you're not going to say, oh, I'll just leave it. But so it's kind of, there's definite people who have the formal responsibility, but I guess there's like informal responsibility for everyone in the organization. Would you agree with that, or am I overanalyzing it?
Oh, that is 100% true, and thanks for bringing that up. Anywhere that you see an opportunity for a threat to exploit the vulnerability, as we say, or a frayed cable, right? Speak up. That doesn't mean that you have to fix it, and consider the extent to how far you want to go in order to deal with it, right? If it's a frayed cable, but it's been there for 9 months, I don't think you need to stop everything you're doing and make sure that facilities comes running up and deals with it. It was the same with our projects, right? If you're looking at things, just generally be aware of a potential. When we're doing formal risk assessments, we do somewhat the same thing. So yeah, it's everyone's responsibility to maintain a level of security, of secure hygiene.
Yeah. And Hannah asks, I think in the chat, or says in the chat, the similar question, PM role versus BA role for risk management. What about architect? Isn't it more related to the solution design where cybersecurity should be considered?
Absolutely. I think architects are responsible for the systems and the data side of stuff. When we talk about risk analysis, we are not segregating. And as you rightly mentioned, Adrian, it is everyone's responsibility. And in fact, that was our session's title for the few years in the beginning, because that is exactly, and in that session, we actually take individual roles and show how if each and everyone actually contributes to this. And even going back to that onion diagram, what we saw, there many people will actually be working on it. So even if you're working on authenticating a process or authorizing a product, it is just not the BAs who will be working. There'll be BAs who are working. There will be the system architects who will be providing the design. There will be developers who will be developing, and then even the QA people who will be testing it. So it is just not one person at every stage. There will be people involved, including architects and the business.
And it's interesting, isn't it? So I have an anonymous friend who I'll remain anonymous for the purposes of this story, and it's definitely not me, but somebody who in a previous role used to visit a lot of client sites that would have physical security in the perimeter, but would tell me that once you're in, you can pretty much, as long as you walk around confidently, you can just walk around the office, and nobody challenges that you've got a visitor's badge on and you should have an escort. And you can go and take a piece of printing off of any confidential printed hard copy, or you could pretend to be an IT support. So there's elements, isn't there, I suppose, of the physical, like there's because the security architecture of the application is one thing, but then there's the fact that people don't do the things you're going to expect them to all the time. So there's the human element, but yeah. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent as I so often do.
No, that's a valid point, Adrian. This is the social engineering, and in fact, I think the experts have predicted that in the next 2 years they will be increasing the attacks, especially relating to social engineering. What you just said, walking confidently and pretending somebody else. And this is again leading to human error and poor maintenance, and not even knowing what are those assets that needs to be protected. So these are some of those things, and absolutely right. They are not off the tangent. They are very much to the subject.
Yeah. I mean, I gather, like, again, this is definitely not something I would ever do, obviously, but I gather that, you know, you can even if you had a visitor's badge that doesn't operate the doors or whatever, quite a common thing to do if you want to get in is just go behind someone who's getting into the door, because people hold doors for people. But I'm probably showing far too much knowledge of social engineering now, so I should go back to the questions in the chat. So Irina asks again, how deep should a BA's knowledge in security be? Should a BA pass any security training or certifications? And of course, I can't remember. I think we've mentioned the IIBA certification, which is of course a good starting point, right? You know, we should look to our professional associations. But I mean, very briefly, because we've just got a couple of minutes left, Terry or Bindu, anything to add about how deep our knowledge should be, and any certification to mention?
Yes, the CCA certification, but we have to see that being a BA is one end of the tangent, and being a cybersecurity analyst is another end. So as BAs, we don't go to the far end. We just get certain knowledge and stay as a BA, but still have certain aspects, knowledge of certain aspects or all the aspects of cybersecurity. That is the far we can go, so that we can help the organizations be secure. Whereas when you go for a particular cybersecurity analyst, it is the far end where you actually learn and stay in the security team or the IT team providing these security solutions. So yes, as a starting point, we've also included those resources. That is where you can start. And of course, CCA is one other thing. Terry, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree. The BA's role is important in many of the things that we do. Understanding security is similar to the BA that starts to understand the network design or the infrastructure, right? The more that you know about an area, the more likely you'll be called in to translate or interpret on behalf of. The idea that what we don't know, we don't know. And recognizing that as a BA, when we come in with security mindset, we'll start asking the questions, whether it's of the architect, whether it's of the project manager. As you become more aware of the importance and value of security, you may want to learn more. And there are 250 domains of cybersecurity, information security. So there's a range of areas that you can become more knowledgeable and aware of. And so that's going to depend partly on your job, partly on the areas that you're working, and partly on your own personal interest. So there are many opportunities. It's as deep as you want it to go.
Fantastic, and what a great place to close the session on. So Terry, Bindu, I'm absolutely certain that people will want to follow you, get in touch with you. What's the best way for people to connect?
Of course, LinkedIn.
Yep, through LinkedIn. Yes, please. Yep. Connect there.
Fantastic.
And Terry and I have created a group as well, but we haven't kind of established it as much as we want to, which we will be doing soon. So yeah, it is a forum for us to talk about cybersecurity and share our learnings there.
Excellent. Well, Bindu, Terry, thank you so much for a really, sort of engaging and interesting and informative presentation. I mean, I've seen you present before, but every time I see you present, I take something else from the session. There are lovely comments coming in the chat as well. So thank you very much. Thank you also to everyone who has attended live. There will be other events like this one. I'm just going to paste in the chat details of the next one, which is November the 10th. It's at 10 a.m. UK time. And it's called What's the Point? The Relationship Between Business Analysis and Value with Anna Rajanda. So I'll just put that in the chat as well. Definitely worth signing up for that. Also, we will get the recording edited and put up on the website for this within about 24 or 48 hours. So share it with your colleagues. You know, if you enjoyed it, share it out there, get the cybersecurity message out there. So Terry, Bindu, lovely to see you as always. Thanks once again. Thanks to everyone that's attended, and stay safe and see you all soon. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Thank you all.